Monte Carlo 2026. It's known as one of the most beautiful stops on tour for a reason, with a constant view of the Balearic Sea, studded with yachts that may or may not belong to the players. We witnessed a week full of equally beautiful tennis, as well as some less beautiful tennis. Favorites were sent packing early, rackets were smashed, and the red dirt took no prisoners as the abrupt switch in surfaces led to some interesting results. This week we saw some classic crash outs.
It is Francisco Cerundolo moving on to round two here in Monte Carlo.
The rise of a hometown hero, and a deciding battle for the world #1 spot. So let's get into it. A great week, a great venue, and a great finale. With the exception of the Golden Swing, which a lot of players choose to skip in favor of events in Doha and Dubai, we've been on hard courts for 8 months now. This is the first big tournament of the season on a different surface, and it's one of the slower ones too. While some players are delighted, some are less so. We've all seen the talks about the homogenization of surfaces, and going from clay to hard to grass maybe isn't as big of a difference as it used to. But that being said, coming from the hard courts to Monte Carlo, which is actually the third slowest clay court on the tour after Buenos Aires and Bucharest, there's a pretty tangible difference here, and the players are going to have to adjust in ways that are maybe a bit more significant than what we saw between Miami and Indian Wells. Monte Carlo is the only non-mandatory Masters event on the calendar, which means that it was hit with a wave of withdrawals early, primarily from the American players, who are often less at home on this surface, but also from Djokovic and last year's semi-finalist Alejandro Davidovich Fokina too, which dropped him several places in the live rankings. And that's not the only rankings shakeup happening this week. Former world #3 and last year's quarterfinalist Grigor Dimitrov lost in 3 tough sets against Tomas Martin Echeverry in the round of 64. His loss here means he exits the top 100 for the first time since 2013, and as of next week's rankings, the seeds for Roland Garros will be locked in, meaning Dimitrov is getting nowhere near a main draw spot and may even have to play qualies unseeded. That torn pec at Wimbledon still has us all wondering what could have been. And then there's Daniil Medvedev. Oh, Medvedev. Safe to say, he's already not Clay's biggest fan.
I don't want to play here on this surface.
Even though he won Rome in 2023 and has had a mostly great start to the year, it was clear that he was coming into this tournament with a mental block about the surface, which translated into a total mental breakdown. I mean, there's not much to say about this match that the scoreline doesn't already tell you. 6-love, 6-love, the dreaded double bagel. 27 unforced errors, 5 double faults, and just 27% of service points won across the match in a tragic 49 minutes. This was as bad a performance from Daniil as we've ever seen, and he knew it. He smashed his racket 6 times in an outburst that had the crowd joining in, before calmly putting it in the courtside trash can. I guess we'll see him in Madrid? On the subject of the injury-prone, we've got to talk about Musetti. Last year's finalist, he was defending 640 points here, and he was in an interesting position. His fantastic run at the Australian Open was stopped in its tracks by a leg injury, and he hasn't really been able to play himself back into form since. That said, we all know what he can do on clay, even if that's not winning a title. Last year's clay season is most of the reason he made it to world #5 at the start of this year. But he's definitely one of those players who likes to take the scenic route. Coming up against the home favorite Valentin Vachereau with said home crowd very hostile, I was expecting him to drop at least a set. Unfortunately, he dropped more than that. With Musetti struggling to make first serves, Vachereau started attacking those second serves, upping the aggression while Musetti just couldn't control the unforced errors. Vachereau began to cruise through his service games, while Musetti was scrapping for each hold.
Brilliant.
In the tiebreak, Musetti squandered a 2 mini-break lead to lose it 8-6. And like I said, Musetti loves a good 3-setter, and he's especially good at playing himself into form. But Vachereau had what's starting to look like that trademark grit and a rowdy home crowd behind him. With a whole load of unforced errors, Musetti let him see 3 break points at 3-all, and Vachereau only needed the winner to convert. They weren't done yet though, with Musetti breaking back as the Monegasque tried to serve it out, but 2 more unforced errors off the Italian's racket put Vachereau right back in prime position again. This time, he didn't let the opportunity pass him by. In doing so, he knocked Musetti down to world #9 in the live rankings and became the first Monegasque player to reach the 3rd round here since his own coach and half-brother Benjamin Balleray did it 20 years ago.
I'd rather win Monte Carlo than a Grand Slam, if I could, to be honest.
And then he kept on coming. It took him 3 tough sets to beat Hubie Hurkacz.
What an effort.
But ultimately, Vachereau outlasted him with that same insane conditioning that helped him claim the title in Shanghai, where the other players were dropping like flies. And in the quarters, again, there was a dip in the level as he lost the second.
He's passed it this time.
And we thought, finally, this kind of untested guy is at last feeling all those hours on such a slow court. But no, he rallied, and with the crowd behind him, racked up yet another top 10 win with his defeat of Alex de Minaur. He's the first Monegasque player ever to reach the semifinals in Monte Carlo. But waiting for him was defending champion Carlos Alcaraz. Coming into this, Valentin had over 5 hours more on court than Carlos, not that it really showed. He held on with guts, and it was just one sloppy service game that saw him lose the first set. In the second, he reclaimed a break off an Alcaraz double fault.
Wow.
But ultimately, Alcaraz was just too good.
A fitting way to finish.
Last time Vachereau played here, this time last year, he was ranked 255 in the world. He finishes this tournament ranked number 17. But with all that said, even the hometown hero couldn't prevent what we've been waiting for all year, our first Synchronized final of 2026. It actually looked to be a little in danger in the round of 16. Sinner, who was on a 37 consecutive set winning streak at the Masters level, was finally taken to 3 in a tiebreak by a fiery Tomas Machac. Jannik faced some physical issues at the start of the second, even calling the physio to the court. But he rallied and closed it out decisively at 6-3 with, as is usual for Sinner, but maybe less expected on clay, some clutch serving. Speaking of the serve though, that insane first serve percentage we saw in Miami, where he was averaging 70%, dropped significantly this week. Against Zverev in the semis, he was landing a comparatively low 59% of them, but winning 87% of those points. Where Sinner remains really strong is on that second serve, where he's winning 75%. On a surface like clay, especially a surface as slow as Monte Carlo plays, a big serve is less of an advantage, which makes this even more impressive. I mean, Zverev didn't even get a single look in. He hasn't played that well all week, struggling in the round of 32 against world number 109 Cristian Garin, who really dominated on both serve and return, winning 91% of his own first serves in the first set and 36% of Zverev's. It went to 3, and suddenly Garin was up a double break for love.
Oh, that is an incredible touch.
You guys know that Zverev's passivity is an ongoing issue, and it's one I've talked about before here on the channel. But from here, he locked in mentally while Garin struggled to close it out. This kind of aggression, rushing the net to put it away, isn't exactly classic Zverev. It's just a shame he needed to go a set and a double break down to get there.
Oh, he gets it done now.
He clung to the same aggression in his quarterfinal against Joao Fonseca, going for 20 net points and winning 17 of them. Still, it took him 3 sets to put the Brazilian away.
He gave him too much of a look.
And in the semis, it was yet another Sinner clash, which ended up much the same as the rest, 6-1, 6-4. Even on a surface that favors Zverev and supposedly doesn't favor Sinner. He only has one clay title to his name, the Croatia Open in 2022, and now he's hoping to make it 2 on a much bigger stage. And so, there we had it, our first Synchronized final in months. It's a key test in the run-up to Roland Garros, and it was also the deciding matchup for the world number 1 spot, which Carlos has held since last November. And going into it, they had some weirdly symmetrical stats. 6 hours and 1 minute on the court this week, 66 weeks apiece at world number 1, and 1,651 points won each in their rivalry. It's kind of like fate at this point. But the beauty of the numbers wasn't reflected in beautiful conditions. It was gray and gusty, far windier than any other day this week, and that certainly affected the quality of the tennis too. Both guys were struggling with the serve, with the first serve percentage in the first set sitting at 57% for Alcaraz and 53% for Sinner, lower than it's been for both guys all week. A couple of early breaks were a signal that this wasn't going to be the usual serving masterclass. But there was still some serious clutchness going on. In my Miami Open recap, I talked a little bit about Carlos going for safer serves in the bigger moments, which has cost him over the last few weeks. And that was pretty much the opposite of what he was doing yesterday. But the problem with a risky serve is that it's, well, risky. Alcaraz knew that in these windy conditions he'd have a smaller margin for error, but he also definitely knew that Jannik would pounce at any hint of weakness. In an effort to stay aggressive, he had to paint the lines, and he missed uncharacteristically often, producing 3 double faults in the first set alone. But the conditions were affecting Sinner equally. We saw some costly mishits off both players' rackets, shanks we wouldn't ordinarily expect from guys at this level. 23 unforced errors for Carlos in the first set, 21 for Jannik. Somehow, we made it to a tiebreak, and there, Jannik really locked in. Like he'd suddenly decided the win didn't matter at all. He made all 6 of his first serves and showed some great anticipation, chasing down Carlos's famous drop shot to get the mini break.
This time he saw it coming.
Exactly.
A stray forehand into the net cost him that mini break, but ultimately he won the set off another double fault. And yes, I know we were all thinking it. This wasn't exactly the prettiest tennis match we've ever seen, but there were still glimpses of brilliance going on. I talked about Sinner's anticipation, but Alcaraz was learning his lessons too.
He made it! Oh, it's incredible!
And this is what's really fun about two top players who just know each other's game. They're constantly trying to solve each other. Carlos knows that Jannik knows that a drop shot's coming, and he uses that. This sport is definitely something else. But the thing is, the errors didn't stop from either side of the net. Carlos went down break points in his next service games, digging himself out with some clutch serving. Sinner broke back to get to 3-all off yet another unforced error. From there, it was the Italian's match. After a clinical hold of his own serve, he capitalized on yet another double fault to get the break 5-3. 3 more Carlos unforced errors, and we had a maiden Monte Carlo champion and a new world number 1. For our first Sinkeras final of the year, it wasn't exactly what any of us expected. Ultimately, it came down to which player could hang in there and adapt to the conditions, and on the day, that player was Jannik Sinner. He made 38 unforced errors to Carlos's 45. For comparison, in the semis, Carlos made 20 and Jannik just 11. And yeah, a big part of it is the player you're facing on the other side of the net. Neither of them could afford to play it safe, and really, we wouldn't want them to. They wouldn't be Sinkeras if they did, but it's going to be really interesting to see how this shapes each player's strategy for the rest of clay season, and its crowning glory, the possible rematch at Roland Garros. What a week. Sinner's now won 4 consecutive Masters titles, and this is kind of turning into his year. But things are still up in the air for next week, and if Alcaraz wins Barcelona, he'll overtake Sinner in the rankings again by just 10 points. Meanwhile, the rest of the tour still has a lot to show us on this surface. Personally, I can't wait to get pulled into Madrid and Rome. We'll keep it going here on the channel with our coverage of clay season, so like, subscribe, turn on post notifications so you don't miss a thing here on Courtside, and until next time, keep going for the lines.